Welcome back to Awakened Exchanges. I'm your host, Jay Rich, and I want to wish you all a happy new year. I know I'm a little late, but it is the first episode of 2023, so I think it still counts. For those that are just joining us this week, I want to give you a warm welcome to the Exchange, and I hope that you enjoy this episode as we continue down into our Portal to Ascension series. I truly value your new thoughts and energy and hope you continue to join us with each new episode. Please remember that if you have any suggestions for topics or guests, I do listen to the listeners, and I look forward to hearing from you either from our website or you can contact me on Twitter at Awaken Exchanges. I hope you're as excited to be here as I am to be with you today. As I said, I know I'm a little late, but this was supposed to be the New Year's episode. I've mentioned that my life has been fairly good lately. Well, that's also turned into insanely busy as well. So I've taken on a lot of new responsibilities at Tasty's, doing a lot of R&D work there, helping them as we expand into multiple new states. Please, find us in dispensaries to come. I will tell you more about it. Of course, Oregon is always our flagship state, so please always check the dispensaries here if you're joining us locally. Anyway, my day job has gotten significantly more complicated and time-consuming. So add to that multiple health issues in my family, and I've been spreading myself fairly thin lately. Oh, and did I mention that I actually kind of manifested something interesting into my personal life as well? I'm pretty sure the universe is seeing how much I'm really willing to handle, but I'll get my balance back. Enough on that, though. Everyone has complications in their life. I just want to thank you in advance for your understanding, as I'm going to be releasing the next few episodes as I can, and, still hopefully every couple of weeks, but still. As for today's episode, when Neil first gave me the list of people he wanted me to interview for this Portal to Ascension series, I didn't know anything about Ra of Earth. In fact, the name alone made me pause and question. I couldn't quite fathom it. Then I got to speak to him. I don't know what else to say, but wow. What an interesting individual. I really enjoyed our conversation. We got a lot into his history, how he got his name, what some of his philosophy entails. But off camera, our conversations were equally fascinating. So thank you again, Ra. I really appreciate your time and energy. It was a pleasure to share this exchange with you. One quick note, before we were even ready to start the episode, Ra and I kept interrupting each other and having this weird little fun banter, but I caught him asking me about my name, and so if you're interested, stay tuned after the episode for a quick little snippet of how I got my moniker as well. Just something hopefully a little fun for the fans. Anyway, before you get to hear from Ra, I want to thank each of you personally for your support. Just listening and sharing this podcast with your friends gives me a reason to keep providing the best content that I can. If you have the means and would like to contribute personally, please take a look at our Patreon page where you will get access to exclusive content and deals. Your personal support there and at Awaken Vapes are currently the best means of funding for this podcast, and I truly hope you all know how much I appreciate each and every single one of you. As for our other sponsors, Awaken Vapes was actually the first of the Awaken brands and has been helping you modulate your high with CBD only, high terpene vape products since 2019. Magic Mind, a magical combination of ingredients designed to help you improve your energy, focus, and productivity. And Genesis Pharms is still making the highest quality medicinal RSO among many other fantastic products, and you can find them at dispensaries in Oregon as well. And remember, if you enjoy this podcast, please follow us on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube, or follow us wherever else you're listening. And please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. I know every podcast says that, but it's because it really does help spread the word. You can also support us on Patreon or connect with us on the social media of your choice. We are at Awakened Exchanges on Facebook and Instagram, and at Awaken Exchanges on Twitter. All right, now stay tuned, and thank you for listening to Awakened Exchanges.
still can't say enough about Magic Mind. They have been nothing but generous and kind since reaching out to us, and when you add good people to a great product, you're certain to have a winning combination. Magic Mind has designed the world's first productivity drink, a morning ritual built to help the creative workers of the 21st century. Magic Mind's science-backed blend of matcha, nootropics, and adaptogens work together to get you into that flow state faster, all without the anxiety or jitters that can come with caffeine. All you get is the focus and productivity. So what else could you ask for? Well, visit magicmind.co/awake today and learn more about what this elixir can do for you. Better yet, use the promo code AWAKE20, that's AWAKE20, and get a total of 40% off your first order with that discount code. That comes to about $3 per bottle to help bring unbeatable focus and clarity to your life every single day. Next, we have Genesis Pharms. Founded on the belief in cannabis's ability to heal, Genesis Pharms is more than a brand. They're a compassionate community of like-minded folks that bring top-quality cannabis products made with love and care. You can find their products on the best dispensary shelves across the state of Oregon. Their RSO is the highest, most consistent quality in the state. Their tinctures are second to none, and their personal massage oil will have you and your partner coming back for more. Double entendre intended? Possibly. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram and ask for them in your local dispensary today. You can even learn more about Genesis Pharms by listening to Sean on our very own Awaken Exchanges episode number 3. That brings us to Awaken Vapes, bringing you the highest quality CBD vape cartridges since ringing in the new year back in 2019. I became passionate about cannabis after a car wreck left me with major migraines, and Western medicine had failed to alleviate the symptoms. After about 2 years, a very compassionate doctor decided to ask me if I'd ever smoked cannabis. Having only tried cannabis a handful of times in high school and college, it was this off-the-cuff recommendation that made me realize the amazing health benefits that we've been missing out from this wonderful plant. Please visit www.awakenvapes.com today, where we still offer our 3 custom terpene formulations, but now with an enhanced flavor profile to go along with those original, powerful effects. And don't forget, you can always email us about any wholesaling or white labeling opportunities. Last but definitely not least, the absolute best way for you to help support this podcast would be by joining our Patreon page. There you're going to get access to exclusive content and amazing merch deals, and you truly are the most important part of this podcast. So joining in the exchange is the absolute best way to become a part of it. Thank you, and I hope to see you all again here in the future.
Welcome back to Awaken Exchanges. I'm incredibly intrigued to be sharing this episode of The Exchange with Ra of Earth, a fascinating fitness and movement guru. Welcome, Ra.
What's up, Jay? Happy to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. I'm really happy that you're here with us as well. I'm sure that there are plenty of people in the audience who are familiar with you, or at least your name. But for those that aren't, would you mind telling them a little bit about yourself real quick?
For sure. So I guess the relevant parts of my story have to do. I guess I'll start there. So I went to school for psychology. So that was 2000, early 2000s. I was 17, so 23 years ago. Started going to school for psychology.
Wow.
And yeah, I played hockey as well, and so hockey was a big part of me as a person and how I viewed the world. It was very aggressive and very like I must win. But I started going to school for psychology, and during that, I realized I didn't want to work in the field of psychology, so I started a minor in exercise science. And I graduated, so I had a major in psychology, minor in exercise science, and I eventually right after I graduated, moved to LA to open up gyms because that's really what I was interested in. And
Nice.
so I was in business for 10 years in downtown LA. I owned several gyms during that time. And it was amazing. It was amazing until it wasn't. 5, 6 years in, I started getting tired of teaching people push-ups. And I also started realizing that I could make myself as powerful outside of the gym than I could, like more powerful outside of the gym than I could inside of the gym. I was really injured
Mm.
from hockey. And so I wasn't really training, I wasn't working out. And I would show up to competitions because I used to do CrossFit competitions. I would show up to CrossFit competitions after not training for sometimes 10 months. I would just be kind of outside. And I would show up to CrossFit competitions and get first place after not touching a barbell in months. And it didn't make sense to me. And so I started researching and looking at how is it possible for a human being to gain power if they're not working out, because from my understanding of my life experience and in school, you have to be, it's like time under tension, you have to be training in order to be competent and able to train at a high intensity. And I was realizing that there's another way to achieve power in my physical body, and it could be useful in a physical competition. And so I found some methods, and it's all the woo woo stuff, right? But
You try it out and you just start experimenting. You have to
yeah,
start somewhere, right?
and it's crazy because I was able to compete against people that were in the gym from the time they woke up to the time they went to sleep, and I was able to do better than them. On top of that, I was injured. So I didn't even have a functional body. That's why I wasn't working out, because it hurt to train. So it hurt me too bad to train. So I wouldn't train. And then I would show up on game day and do better in the competition. And yeah, so I discovered a bunch of stuff, and that became more interesting to me eventually. And that led me to close my gyms and just dive deeper into the human experience. And that's pretty much what I've been doing since I started going to school for psychology. So for the last 23 years, I've been learning about the human being, learning about the human condition in all over the spectrum, from the physical standpoint, from the psychological standpoint, from the energetic standpoint, and everything in between, even the things that shouldn't be possible. I've experimented with a lot of it. And of course, there's still so much more for me to learn. There's people that know more about certain subjects. Well, there's a lot of people that know a lot about more than I do. But I'm really just a student, and then I share online mostly what I discover, and that's a little bit about me.
That's fascinating. I actually studied psychology as well, and then went into sports psychology for a little while and had like 7 different majors before kind of floating off into the ether for a while. Um, but I'm curious if your physical intensity with sports, with hockey and things like that, led you to dive so much deeper psychologically when you started in college and wanting to know more about your body and all of its limits.
You're saying, was my physical capacity enhanced with the knowledge of psychology?
I Yes, but I was actually thinking more along the lines of that you had such an intensity for sport, such a drive. Do you think that that same drive wanted you to learn more, to dive deeper into
Oh,
psychology?
other way around. I like I like that question. Yeah, so for me, there's always been a question, and this isn't exactly answering your question, but
It's all right.
there's always been a question of like competition. Is competition healthy? Is competition something that I really feel aligned to? And I know that competition, like within a sport, it drives you to be better, right? Because
Absolutely.
the motive is to be better than somebody else. And so I don't know if the end, like the motive is the same, but I think the process of wanting to be better, uh, like I was able to take that and translate that into my studies and my research and my hunger to know more, be more. But I don't. But it's weird because I'm like, am I doing this from a competitive standpoint? And that's still unanswered to me. Or if am I doing it truly because this is an interest? I definitely know it's an interest, but I'm still wondering because like this podcast, Instagram, YouTube, it is all a business, and business inherently has competition. And so,
Does it
yeah,
feed that part of your drive just a little
right.
bit?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you're asking, and I have pondered on that, and I guess my answer to you is I don't know. I don't know if I am. I know that it's like the same intensity but a different channel, but I'm still
Mhm.
um, pondering whether I am coming from a competitive nature or not, because that's an unanswered question to me. Is like, is sports good for the human kind? And I still kind of ponder like, is competition, is black versus white, is that needed here? And that's kind of a big unanswered thing that I'm ponder on quite often.
Personally, and one of those things, because I've thought about it as well, is it might have served us in the past for certain reasons, but have we moved past that point, or have we moved to where maybe at least it needs to transition into a little bit of a healthier space? Maybe. Um, I still have a very competitive nature. I love to go out and play basketball, or too many other little random things, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily like when I get too deep into it. I stay out of it for the most part. I'm pretty good enjoying the flow and just enjoying the play. Uh, but it's worse like in driving. I notice that side of me come out where I don't like. I have to work on it a little bit more
Like
frequently.
the road rage you're talking about.
Trying to avoid the road rage, but
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, it took me years to like basically dissolve road rage, like literally years when I intended. Because first I can control the verbal aspect, I can control that, but
Yes.
then I'm like, but I still feel it.
Yeah, you're just like, oh.
So it took years to get like, now I don't have that feeling. But I want to comment on something you said, because a couple not a couple, like 5 years ago, I bought new hockey equipment, and I hadn't been on the ice for like 9 years. And I bought all new like the best hockey equipment that I couldn't afford when I was playing hockey. I owned a gym now, and I could buy whatever I wanted. Bought like the best skates known to man, and I got on the ice, and it was amazing. But I kept on getting into fights, like as an adult. Like as a 35-year-old, I was going out and they're all ex-pro players or college players on summer break or whatever, and they knew what they were doing. And in hockey, you fight, like it's part of the game.
Yeah.
Uh, but I didn't. That's when I was like getting into this zone that was very, very natural for me. But then I would be driving home just thinking, what am I doing? Like this, I don't actually like this. And so I only played for basically 1 year, and I haven't been on since, because kind of like what you said, it was like a part of me that obviously exists. But I kind of was like a little repelled by it.
Yeah. For me, do you do much with or with astrology?
I need to get more into it, but I do. I can handle the conversation.
I've been fascinated with it for the last few years, but one of all of my major planets, my Sun, Mercury, Mars, Venus, all are in Aries. Hard-headed, stubborn Aries. But I was actually pretty shy and quiet and fairly reserved, and so it took learning that aggressive side of me to that it was okay to come out a little bit, to then back it back down and realize that I was looking for that balance between the two, that there was definitely not just a one-sided thing of me.
Right. It's like it was necessary for you to be who you are today.
Exactly. Just like hockey, I don't think that you would be you without having that intensity
Right.
in your life either.
Right. But move
So
beyond it. At least that's what I think. for now.
Well, at one point, as Ronnie, you finished 55th in the world, I believe, in CrossFit. Uh, how did
Yeah,
Ronnie become Raw?
yeah.
Go ahead. Please tell me the other.
Good question. Yeah, I was top few hundred consistently in the world um, for like 6 or 7 years when I was competing in CrossFit, and uh, I was Ronnie Teasdale then, and I was Ronnie my entire life. And I remember, going through my dad was Ron, so
Mm-hmm.
I remember wondering like Ronnie sounded childish to me, and I'm very playful and childish. I like
Yeah.
boy things, right? I like
You can still
cars.
be Ronnie once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. So I like that part of me, and I like the nature of that. But I just remember and I owned a gym, which means that I literally got paid to just play all day long. I was Ronnie, but I just remember feeling like when is this going to end? Like when am I going to become Ron? Like when is this going to be an adult? Um, and I closed my gyms, and I remember feeling like shedding that identity, and I didn't feel like Ron fit me, and so I changed my name to my actual birth name, which was Ronald. And I introduced
Okay.
myself as Ronald for maybe a year, and I remember just feeling like it wasn't right, like it didn't feel correct. And the way I was spelling Ronald on Instagram was raw underscore Nold. And I think because I, I mean it Ronald, it for me
Yeah.
it just kind of flowed, like that's how you say Ronald. There's two different parts. It may have been influenced by the books Ra, or the Law of One books by Ra.
Yeah.
Like Ra is like Ra, right? Capital R, capital A. So I wasn't feeling like I was mirroring or identifying as Ra, but I just sort of liked that, and I also like it's the Law of One. Basically, Ra is saying that Ra is us and we are Ra. So
So,
there is a little bit of Ra in all of us, according to him or it.
exactly. So you're not saying that you are that entity or even like Ra of Egypt or any of that stuff. You are actually, separating yourself and saying, I am Ra, the adult Ronald. I am part of us. And you got inspiration from that.
Yeah, and I think that for me, the Ra, I wasn't really associating with the actual entity as much as I was associating it with light.
Okay.
Because for me, that the connection with Ra is like the sun god, right? Even before even knowing what Ra was, like
Yeah.
from the book series, um, where he describes himself, if it's a he, it's not really a he, but it's a collection of beings that all ascended out of the Venus planetary system. So it's an entire species of humans that are in one collective consciousness. But in order for this collective consciousness to be able to communicate with humans on Earth, they basically make themselves Raw so that we can understand. It gives it a singular identity because we don't really understand speaking to a collective consciousness.
Gotcha.
So
I had forgotten that aspect of the book. Please
So
go
even
ahead.
before I knew all that, like Ra was just sun god to me, right? And so I liked being out in the sun. I kind of skipped over that that aspect of it, um, having to do with like what I discovered to make myself more powerful in the gym.
I was actually
Um,
going to ask you about how you went from the gym life into the transition, so it's perfect timing.
So let me just finish up the name thing. So Ronald didn't feel right. So I was going through Kundalini teacher training, which I've done
Mm-hmm.
Kundalini yoga for like 16 years now.
Wow.
But 5, 6 years ago, I was becoming a teacher. And there's this concept of a spiritual name. And the thing with the spiritual name is that they say that this is the vibration that you are going to be aligned with, that you're going to be recognized as. If you request that a spirit name be assigned to you, you give up your birth name. Like that's part of the agreement in the route that I went. And I was okay with that because Ronnie and Ronald, like I was okay giving that up. And that's kind of what I was wanting. So I was like, all right, this is in alignment. This feels good. And I was assigned Ravi Chandra. And Ravi
Huh.
means essence of the sun, and Chandra means moon. So I started introducing myself as Ravi. And 6 months into that, I was like, this doesn't feel right. Like every time I introduce myself as Ravi, it just doesn't feel like me. And then so I was like, okay, Ronald, Ronnie, Ravi, all had Ra. Like it all had Ra in the start. Like
Even how you were using yourself on Instagram as Ronald.
right, right. So I was like, I'm just gonna try Ra, and it was just an experiment, and it felt right. And so that's what I like. That's who I am now, and that's how it came to be.
And
Ron.
so Ronald became, Ronnie became Ronald, became Ravi, became Ra.
Yes. The
That's an
five
impressive little
second.
story. I like your version much better though. I like that. So how did you go from the gyms into this Instagram personality, this YouTube speaker, and this new lifestyle?
So I was doing Instagram when I was having the gyms, but Instagram was a lot different then. It was mostly just pictures, or when it started being videos, it was more of like look at me content.
Yeah.
That's what was gathering attention. It was kind of just like look at me. And so I was just doing tricks and a little bit of tips like in the gym. And uh eventually that was like I was done with the gym, right? I closed the gyms and I was studying. So when I closed my gyms, I really got deep into the sun, the earth. I got deep into the elements. So what I discovered when I mentioned that there's more power to be had outside of the gym, I discovered all the cultures, all the occult teachings were talking about the five elements or the four elements, right? And they're different in the different cultures, but essentially it's light or fire, earth, air, water, and then ether. And ether could also be consciousness or God or source or spirit, but earth, light, water, air, and something that arranges all of those into existence, which is
Essence.
ether. Yeah, the essence and the map, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
is. And so I was studying a lot into that, and I felt like I had a lot to share. And so I just started talking. I just started actually lecturing. When I owned the gyms, I lectured every single day to all my classes. It wasn't like I was deep into like I was one of the top in the world. I knew what I was doing, and I wanted my students to know the deeper aspects of the movement, right? It's not just a
Mm-hmm.
squat where you like sit your butt down and stand up. That's the 3 second or 5 second way you can explain to somebody a squat, but you could also be talking to somebody about like why your pinky toe is doing that because it's traveling up like there's a whole lecture that you can give on every single movement. And so I've translated that lecturing over into just what I learn. And I just share on Instagram, I share on YouTube. And I think that also comes from me really being interested in humans and helping humans. That's why I went to school for psychology. So I learned a lot about psychology with the intention of speaking to people about their problems and helping them solve them. And so a lot of the nature of what I'm speaking about on social media is just actionable tips that people can use to simply put them on a path to solve the problems that most of us all face. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all going through the same story in different ways. And so just little tips and tricks on that, and that's how I've developed my brand on social media, and it's really gratifying for me, and I feel like it's gratifying to the people that tune in.
I definitely think so, and I think that what's kind of showing through is that even in your fitness aspect of your life, you were there trying to help people. That was kind of the goal for you. It was always something about helping people along the way, and you've transitioned into a very related but different kind of help. It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do want to take a moment because
Yeah.
those 5 elements, the way that you and I got connected was through Neil, who's hosting the
Yes.
Ascension Conference down in San Diego in April 21st to 23rd. But I'm going to be speaking live, and that's going to be my subject, is going to be how I found the power within those 5 elements and can utilize it both from the gym standpoint and just in everyday life. So I'm going to be speaking more in depth about that one specific topic at the Portal to Ascension conference next year.
That's awesome. I'm actually really looking forward to that. I think Neil's episode will drop just an episode or two before this one, so it'll be
Oh,
perfect
nice.
timing. So let's see. I'm curious. Can you give us a little teaser, little bits on the elements? Get us interested and get
So
down to San Diego.
yeah, so light, like the sun, I look at everything from a different perspective, and when you switch your perspectives, you realize how important things are that um, weren't important before. Like, so the way that we're taught in school is that the sun's a burning ball of gas out in the galaxy, and that the Earth and all the other planets are just kind of leftover dust.
Yeah,
And that's the birth. That's like how the solar system formed. Is just this gravitational model of the universe, and that's how like basically everything on this plane is based on, is this gravitational model of the universe. And I look at, and I'm able to hold the perception of an electric universe where the planets are actually birthed out of the sun, and the sun is more like an electric node within the construct of the solar system, which is a nodal point to the entire universe, that's all communicating instantaneously with each other. And from that standpoint, from that perspective, you realize how important light is in terms of power, in terms of information, and being out in the light can allow your body to harness way more power. And then you start looking at your body and you start realizing that the melanin in our skin, the melanin in our hair, the melanin in our eyes are more like solar panels, and it's collecting
hmm.
light, right? We're taught that melanin is to protect us and to block light. That doesn't make any sense because melanin is dark, and dark things attract light, and they don't bounce light away, right?
Like a black T-shirt absorbing heat in the sun. It's going to keep you
Exactly.
warmer than a white one. Yeah,
You know this, right? Same thing with rock.
absolutely.
Black rocks are hotter than white rocks because the white rocks are just bouncing it all off. So the melanin's job is to make you actually collect more light. And yes, it does stop you from burning, but it's because it's prepared you to collect and absorb that light. And then it's like, what does the light do when it goes in your body? Well, there's melanin in our entire nervous system. There's melanin in our brain, and so what I feel like is happening is the light is being traveled through our nervous system into. There's also another complex where the melanin comes into our eyes and goes hypothalamus, pituitary, pineal gland. So there's
Hmm.
two little cords that come off our eye. One goes to our visual cortex and is processing vision in the back of our brain, and the other one goes through and it ends up in the pineal gland. And the pineal gland's main job is to produce melatonin, which is what allows us to reset and recover every single night and also dream. And
Oh,
so,
I was
yeah,
just going to
it's just,
say it's also the thought to be where we're doing our endogenous um, DMT. Yeah,
yeah, right.
interesting.
Right. So it's like, where does this DMT come from? What's it made of? What is giving us access to the dream world? What is dreams? How come we're seeing it? Right. Well, where's the light coming from that gives us that internal vision? Because it's vision, right? When we
Mm-hmm.
are looking out, we're seeing light. That's what vision is. And so if we're looking in and seeing things, like, where's that coming from? And so it's the light. And really just digesting that and understanding that, like, if you like, light is present for all of us, but some of us are indoors. And so what's the difference between receiving natural light from outside or internal light from inside? And I think that that was a difference from being inside of a gym underneath lights versus being outside in the
Mm.
gym with the natural harmonious light that our body's used to. I look at indoor lighting as junk food. It's like fast food light, right? It's missing. It's inharmonious. It's missing components. It's inharmonious. And so that's what we're feeding ourselves.
Okay.
And that's going to make you, for lack of a better words, less than if you were feeding yourself the raw natural light from outdoors. And
Such as the nice big window beside you that you get to have that natural light pour in.
right, technically, like, if you really want to get down to it, though,
You still want to be outside the glass, I'm assuming?
yeah, because the glass breaks the light.
Mm.
Yes.
Makes sense. Filters, fractures.
Right. So there's that sort of diagnosis that I've kind of gone through with light, and the same thing with earthing. Right, earthing's not like, everyone knows what earthing is now, and so it's a little review of that. But, like, put into all of the other frameworks, you can see that, like, even the earth is magnetic and the light is electric, and then we're in between. We're this conduit and we're electromagnetic. And
Huh.
look, like, just it's crazy, because I used to think of our body as like a machine that is kind of self-sufficient. And that technology, or how I look at my body, is just getting more and more complex and dynamic the more I learn about it. Yes, it can still technically be a machine, but it's so much more than what our machine technology does nowadays. Like, it's just way more intricate, the way that it infuses with everything. Like, we're essentially a part of everything, and how that all fits together is almost, it's it's almost beyond us to be able to comprehend how our body works
Oh,
and how our
yeah.
brain is.
The amount of other uh, bacteria and creatures that are living as a part of our own body. It's just,
Oh yeah,
I
look,
know.
I was just taking notes. I was doing a live where I was counseling people, so I just grabbed this sheet of paper and I looked at what sheet of paper I grabbed, and it's the brain, gut, consciousness, microbiology of our mind. And this is a paper by Radek Vana in Inquiries Journal, and it explains that we're holobionts, which basically means that we're not human. Human suggests that we're just human, but human beings are,
One human
right.
creature.
Human beings are a collection of beings, and it's made up of the bacteria, the many bacteria
Many.
in the body, and human cells. And our entire human existence is predicated on that relationship. Like, there is no humanity as we know it without the other entities that make us up. They signal emotions. They determine how our cells are made. And so, yeah, just knowing that and how important that is
Yeah, they help us process everything. It's Yeah, if that's why like antibiotics can be so harmful, is getting rid of the beneficial bacteria as well as, you know, the stuff that's causing us harm. Um, yeah, there's definitely trade-offs.
Right.
Um,
And that's where that whole like we're way more complex than we're taught, because it
yeah.
just seems like there's a bacteria inside of you that is disrupting everything. Let's kill it, right? It's like as simple as that. But there's a lot more to it than that. The yeah, and I feel, and what I actually like, how I monetize my audience is through Purium, and I'm with a network marketing company, and Purium's main mission is to change the world by changing the way people eat, mostly because we want to fix people's bacteria in their gut, because the gut brain, the heart brain, the head brain connection, if we can,
Yeah,
you know, help people with their food and their food supply, then we can create better functioning humans, and with better functioning humans we have a better functioning society. So we can change the way people eat, we can change the world.
that
And
is
so
so crazy. I literally was just going to ask you what your message for the world was. It was the next question on my list, so you're already reading my mind, apparently. And, Uh, so, change the world through changing their food.
yeah, so that's what I do for the green pieces of paper, right? That's what I do for money, is it's network marketing, and I sell superfoods. I also recruit people to sell superfoods, and then that becomes a whole leadership development thing, because I'm leading an organization and to help set them up to set up their own businesses. But so that's their
That's the
mission.
right livelihood and
Right.
the Buddhist Eightfold Path, making your money through something that's still helpful, through something that works
Because
for you.
because that's how the world operates. So
You
we do
have
get to
to.
participate in this game. Um, but within that, like, be conscious of it, right? But
Yeah.
I would say that, to your question, that's the mission of the
Of
industry of my
yes.
business. And I would say that my message to the world, or mission to the world, is similar. But it's more about self, right? So as opposed to food, it's the same thing. The more we get to know our full spectrum of ourself, the more that we evolve and enhance our state of being. That's how we influence all of reality. So we do change the world, we change the planet, we change the universe by changing ourself. And that word change, you know, it doesn't have to be change. It can just be being the greatest expression of self, is how we experience the greatest expression of the universe. Because I feel that we're all connected. We just, most of us don't know that yet. And as we go through the journey of self, the whole planet shifts around us.
That's a really good way of looking at it. And I agree. I think we are definitely all connected. We are all part of the whole. Um, it's it's such a great message that I don't think a lot of people uh, have quite woken up into yet. But it's more. It is getting out there into the culture more. Um, being true to yourself, being genuine and honest, and uh, not trying to put on those masks for everybody.
The the funny thing about that is that when you stop doing that, when you stop putting on the mask, when you stop doing the little white lies,
Mm-hmm.
not even lies, like just projecting out something that isn't true. Um, when you stop doing that and you actually start just always being authentic, that allows you to connect with somebody else. Because the next state, like when we mentioned raw earlier, right? And when we
Mm-hmm.
mentioned ascension, a lot of people say the word ascension, but what it actually means is that there's another state of being that we become. And the next state that we go into is one where telecommunication exists. But before that, we actually feel each other. It's more of an empathic state. And when we
So
can
from
feel,
an empathy becomes telepathy,
right.
kind of.
And right
Okay.
now we're individual components. And so we're individual components. Uh, and the reason for that, like we talked about, like going through the chapters of our life, and hockey was one of them, or sports and competitive. Like right now, we're in a state where individualness is important. It's important for us to have sensation of self. The reason why that's important is so that we can then start connecting with the other individual components. So once we have our identities, then we can connect with each other, because the grand consciousness wants us all to know all the different aspects of ourselves. So that's why we have different lives and have different bodies, so that when we start connecting and feeling what the other person's feeling and eventually communicating without words, it's just going to be gnosis. You're just going to
Mm-hmm.
know and feel what the other person feels. You're going to know what the other person knows. There is not going to be such thing as lying. There is not going to be such thing as like misdirecting somebody or putting on a face that isn't true, because everyone's going to be connected through the field, right? Their hearts, and through the alignment. And the step to that is you got to start getting out of the way of that, right? So if you're still lying, if you're still being somebody who you're not, then that's a block. That's a block to ascending to this level where humanity is going. It is going in this direction. And you can see that it's going in this direction by just looking at what we're developing artificially. We're developing the internet. And the internet is a connection of all of us, where I get to know what somebody else is doing on the other side of the world right when they do it. Somebody might be
Yeah.
watching this podcast. They can feel what we're feeling as we're talking. And so we're artificially doing what we're naturally, just through our human technology, going to be able to do eventually. And it's going to happen once we're all in alignment with that.
I'm sure you've heard of Neuralink.
I have, but I haven't looked into it. Elon Musk.
So it's
Yeah.
basically the human technological version of that telepathy and
Mhm.
empathy and knowing the other person's brain waves and stopping the miscommunications. And I grew up in probably around the same time as you, actually. I was born in 81. My parents were big Star Trek fans, so I grew up with like the Next Generation and all that stuff. And um, I just see that mixing of technology, and I can't help but think Borg every once in a while, you know. Uh,
Yeah.
and I know we're already blending with our technology. Our phones are all over the place, and we're using them there. But would you think that a technological enhancement of that level would be an impediment to a spiritual advancement to that level?
See, that's the question, right? That's like, is this the mark of the devil? Right? Like, are we going in the wrong direction with technology? Is AI another being that's here to harvest our energy? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. I feel that maybe technology is neutral, just like a gun is
Mm-hmm.
neutral. And it's really like, how do you use it? Like, that's what makes it good or quote evil. Um, Technology is, right? Like a spider makes a spider web, and
Yeah,
that's technology. I mean, even though this webbing came from the actual spider, but it's using this this tool, this technology for its natural processes. So I don't know. I don't know. For now, I'm trusting that I'm using what I feel is resonant to me in a way that's
mm-hmm.
resonating to me, completely aware that I may be going down the right path, maybe the wrong path. I don't know. It's all an experience. And I think that if you look at technology from the past, so called antiquitech,
Mm-hmm.
um, the or stories of technology from like Atlantis times or Egyptian times, it seems like their technology was a lot different than the way that ours works. And it was wireless. I mean, we're making this whole 5G thing. There are things that, but it seems like it was more harmonious
Let's say
and
more sound vibration based.
yeah, and using electromagnetism, like using
Mm-hmm.
the currents that are like already in existence going throughout the world. It feels like a lot of our stuff is opposing health, right? It's almost either too strong or disruptive, and it feels also like that might be an agenda when you actually look at it and dissect it, and it most definitely could be used to keep our powers down. Um,
And
with
even if
all that,
that agenda may just be greed, it doesn't stop it from being an agenda.
right, and I also feel like th- that really won't matter
Mm-hmm.
um, if we're all meant to ascend. I do also. I'm in the awareness that like right now, I get to benefit from cars and planes because there is a generation of people that were taken advantage of and used as sort of test dummies, and a lot of planes crashed, and a lot of cars had a lot bad exhaust at one point. It was
Mm-hmm.
poisoning people.
Lead gas.
Yeah. So I feel like our generation, we're here now at the dawn of like our understanding of technology or re-understanding of technology, because this has all happened before. Um,
Hmm.
and we're going to be the ones that kind of take the brunt of the learning of how we do this properly. And that's just, I've accepted that, and I'm happy to be in this generation where we've got the benefits of flight and cars and industry that's not really a concern for my health, but now there's this other stuff that is a concern for my health, and it just is the way that it is. That's how I've sort of wrapped my head around it.
I like thinking of it like that as well. We're kind of in the transition zone. So, uh, what we're doing right now may be looked bad upon later on, but we are trying to transition out of it and bring what's coming next as well. We were kind of brought up through this generation that didn't really think much about how they were affecting the future, to us realizing, oh shit, we have to think about the future, to now let's bring it into, hopefully bring it into awareness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
uh, so are I know you've got the Portal Ascension coming up in, I think, April 21st to 23rd, I believe.
Yeah.
uh, what other projects do you have coming up on the way?
So I just moved into a house in Brentwood, which is in Los Angeles, and we have a yoga studio in the back of our house.
Oh, nice.
And so I'm going to start having people over here, and the whole point of those sessions is I want to start helping people reprogram their mindset in a way that sticks, because we can go scrolling through Instagram and see mindset coaches telling us how to be a certain way, but usually it doesn't stick, right? We can understand a concept, but there's still a program running in our body where we emotionally get triggered for certain things. And most of that happened when we were younger, right? We developed these triggers, the way that our parents talked to us, the way that the bullies picked on us in school, the way that the teachers groomed us, where we got these triggers to react a certain way. And as an adult, they don't really serve us as much as we'd like it to. And so if we can take our brain wave frequencies back to a more receptive, like younger version of ourselves through something like breath work or kriya or meditation, or even like an ice bath will do that. Then once we get into that frequency, then we can start doing a writing drill or an imagination exercise where we can start reprogramming the patterns of who we are in a way that it's going to stick with us longer. And so that's the idea of what I want to do. And I want to have live classes here and stream it online and start a whole, like you said, it's a project. I want to start a project where it's not me as a teacher. So I did that with the gym, right? I've been trying to figure out for the last 5 years how to teach people in a way where it's not teacher student, right? Guru disciple, parent child. I think that that's from the past. And now we want to start like using the vortex.
Community.
Right. So I've got a way, I want to start it first, but I've got a way where it's not just me speaking to a group of people, but the group learns from the group because that's more effective and efficient. So yeah, if anyone's listening to that, just keep your eye out for those, and I'll try and make it available online as easily consumable as possible.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing some of that. I know we're getting towards the end here. Do you have any last words of wisdom you wanted to share with people today before we closed out?
You know, there's this big thing that I am always talking to people about, and it's responsibility. And we feel that responsibility is like what's the word? It's like something that we don't want, right? Like it's something that is going to weigh us down. And it's almost like culturally we're trying to be less responsible for as much as possible. But looking at responsibility as a skill set, like responsibility is the ability to respond. And so we actually want to have the most responsibility. We want to be able to respond to anything. And the more the ability to respond to things comes from you accepting responsibility for as much stuff as possible. And I feel like that can also be a journey of its own that I would encourage people to go on. In every moment of life is a moment that we're able to accept responsibility for. And so when we're driving down the road and road rage happens, right? Like that's you not accepting responsibility for the person doing whatever they're doing. And so we can, in every moment, like just let ourselves be the ones responsible for the things that are happening to us. And eventually we realize that they're not really happening to us, they're happening for us because that's our own creation. And the way to this godly nature, and I'm not saying we are God, I'm saying that we allow the concept of what people feel like is God or is God, we allow this force to come through us. And it's a creation force. And so the more responsible we are for things, the more creator abilities we have, because as a creator, we are responsible for everything. So the doorway to being the ultimate creator and to feeling and perceiving through the creator eyes is to be responsible.
I really like that. That sounds like a spiritual, or like you said earlier, woo-woo kind of version of Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life, Psychology. Have you heard much or read much of him?
I haven't read. I don't know what you're talking about right now. I know who Jordan Peterson is. He pops up on my feed all the time, and I really like what he says, but I haven't gotten deep into
Yeah, I think you're going to really like 12 Rules for Life if you see that. Or he has a very interesting YouTube series where he breaks down Genesis. And yeah, it's just the way he does it through a psychological perspective and through a storytelling perspective. I think it's going to be right down your alley if you get around to it.
Okay. Yeah. I'll look that up.
All right. Well, I'm going to be including some links in the show notes as well, but what's the best place for people to connect with you?
So on Instagram is raw. So RA_of_earth is the main channel. Also on TikTok, it's raw.of.earth, and YouTube is raw of earth, rawofearth.com. So yeah, I'm available and accessible on all of those. Anyone can send me a message. I answer the DMs in my inbox. So any messages, I'm happy to take.
Well, and thank you again so much for joining us. You have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Exchange as much as I did, and I want to once again thank Raw of Earth for joining us this week and sharing such a fascinating story. I wish him the best of success as he continues his amazing growth in this field. Again, stay tuned for a quick bonus story if you're interested, and last but certainly not least, I want to thank all of our listeners out there. You are the reason I continue to make these podcasts and keep spreading the word about these amazing awakened vapes. Please tell your friends about us, follow us on Spotify, or subscribe to us on YouTube, or wherever else you're listening. And please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you can. Every podcast does it because it really does help with visibility. You can also support us on Patreon or connect with us on the social media of your choice. We are at Awakened Exchanges on Facebook and Instagram, and at Awaken Exchanges on Twitter. Thanks again for listening to Awakened Exchanges, and have a blessed day.
And you go by
Welcome.
Jay.
I do. You're totally fine. It was perfect timing. It had to just set off the tension. It was perfect. Yeah, Jay is fine.
All right, great.
Yeah. I don't know. It's logged in with my actual. John Richardson became Jay Rich, and that's what everybody had called me. So that's what the podcast name became. So yeah.
Great.